This is my journey that I'm just actually really excited to share with you. I've done these two pictures already in my YouTube channel, but this one I got stuck on again. So it's called Beloved, and when we talk about love, it's such a weird and vast topic that it's almost overwhelming and too complicated to unwrap, but I'm going to try and unwrap it as it related in my life. So I'm going to look first of all from a God perspective. So God, Jesus, looked down on Ian Don in Scotland, and he says, "Ian Don, I want you to follow me." Okay, I said, sure, I'm going to do that. So it started in getting baptized when I was like in my probably 28, 29. And then he kept drawing me into himself, basically, and into what he'd called me to do. Was I reluctant? No, I wasn't. At that time, because he was leading me and prodding me and drawing me, I wasn't reluctant. So why did he call me? Why did he choose me? Well, it wasn't because I was popular or important or somebody. Actually, if anything, I was like a little bit like Paul, the least of the least, and didn't feel worthy in my own eyes even. In our healing journey, I think we almost have to start from a base of love. Like, are you loved? Like, are you really loved? Is somebody loving you? Can you love yourself even enough to start the journey? It's kind of where I'd start. And I don't even know if I had that, but I knew somehow God was drawing me. And here's a bigger picture that I wasn't aware of when first God called us out of Scotland. God loved a city in Canada called Kelowna. Whew. And he saw me saying, "Lord, I'm willing to do whatever you want me to do." But I didn't know my purpose when I left. When I got that uneasy thing, I thought we eventually knew, both me and my wife knew, that we would be leaving Scotland like a year and a half before we even knew where. Like, we thought we were going to go to Africa. And I think at this point, God just dropped that in our laps. So we started the move, and it gave us a direction. And even though we tried to go to Africa, we ended up in Kelowna, and God's call in my life was to pray for a city. So why would God call a fisherman's? My grandfather was a fisherman, my dad was a draper. Why would he call a young boy to come to Canada with his 4 kids and his wife, which was very hard and challenging for them, actually? Why would he do that? And this is not arrogant, but actually, I'm going to say this. There was nobody in Kelowna that could do what I did. It's that simple. People were either too busy or they'd been called and they didn't. I don't know the bigger story, guys, but I know when God called me to Kelowna, it was real. And in my journey, I did what I was supposed to do and end up. Well, first of all, I talked about in my long form YouTube channel on Hidden. I didn't know I was hidden. I didn't know I was hiding from anything when I was in Scotland. So God took me out of Scotland to show me how hidden that I was, and how much of a facade I created around myself, and just to conform to my environment. And then what that led to was a brokenness, and I talk in depth about that in my video too. But now back to Beloved. So this is a tough topic to share and to be honest about. And the biggest challenge that I've had is, as I've shared my story, am I going to be dishonoring my parents by telling my story? And I've had to come and to the conclusion that, look, I love my parents. I'm not angry at them. I've forgiven them. Anyway, I'm coming with the right motive to share my story. I'm not out to tell people how bad they were. I'm not blaming them even for, I actually love my life. I love where I am. I love where I am today in the journey. I love the journey that I've been in. As hard as it's been, I love how God has taken me and broken me. And now he talks about how he loves me. And so going back, so now I'm going to take you back into my childhood a little bit. So, and I've only learned this by going back and asking questions. And that's what I've encouraged everybody that's listening is, guys, if your family is still alive, go and ask the questions. Ask the hard questions. It's very uncomfortable. But what it does, it gives you an identity of who you are and how come you think the way you do. Like, I love watching a program right now where people are finding they've maybe been adopted. I want to know who my natural dad is. And they go and search out. And the relief that gives them when they find out that they haven't made some of this stuff up on their heads, that it's real. So I went back and I would be asking my mom and dad questions, and they're very uncomfortable with it, but they were very honest with me and they shared vulnerably. So I said, tell me about your upbringing and tell me what it was like. And I would ask questions like, how was your dad and how was your mom? And I learned some very interesting things about my mom's mom at that time. But I'm going to jump a generation and go to my mom's story. So my mom had a brother, and she always wanted a sister. And then my dad, his mom and dad had a stillborn sister, and he had two brothers. So both of them came into their relationship wanting a girl. Now, guys, it seems really silly, but it's very important that when we're getting kids, that we're not fixated on what gender they are. Like, God's big enough to pick the gender. But they both came into a relationship wanting a girl. My brother was born, and then my mom and dad got expecting again 2 years later, and 3 years later I was born. So even from little, I sensed, like, what's wrong? Like, why isn't there joy in this moment? And it's like all of a sudden, like, I'm plunged into this environment where, I mean, sure, they love me, but like, why isn't there the excitement and the joy that there's another boy? And I had no idea. I just knew there's something wrong, like there's something missing here. And then a few years later, my sister was born. So now they have what they wanted, and they had my brother, and I was kind of caught right in the middle of this. So when you talk about love, my sister said to me recently, Ian, you know you were loved, right? And I said, well, I know in my head, but in my heart, I didn't feel loved. And to understand the culture too, this is an older generation that weren't touchy-feely, they weren't affectionate. They never spoke out the words. Like, even till the day my dad died, he couldn't say, I love you. And I knew he did, but I don't know what that was for him, but he couldn't say it. And anyway, so going back to the story, my sister says, you know, Mom and Dad loved you, right? And I says, no, I don't fully know. He says, well, when you were a teenager and you'd get mad, you'd create a scene almost at every supper time. Anyway, I would just stomp out, and my mom and dad would be left there crying, and they would be saying, we don't know what to do with Ian. We don't know what to do. We don't understand him. We don't know. But by not understanding, if they'd come and asked, I might have been able to articulate some of it. But instead of doing that, they withdrew further. So as a teenager, I would just feel more isolated. So you would say, well, surely you got words of affirmation. And it's like, no, actually, I don't know what words of affirmation were. And when I first came to Canada and I painted I'm going to just bring this out. When I painted my first painting, I got to blow my nose. So when I painted my first painting, called The Intercessor, which basically was my journey, basically up to here, in a way. People would say, oh, I love your painting. Well, all of a sudden now I'm faced with, oh my gosh, this feels so uncomfortable. And in my head, I thought, I'm not accepting any of this, because if you can give me affirmation, if you can praise me up, you can also rip me down. So initially I shut myself off to any praise and any, well done, that's amazing, you're great artist, Ian, which was like, it was very uncomfortable. I was just doing what I just thought I was supposed to be doing. And anyway, so I don't know if you guys if you understand what sarcasm is, but the definition is really fascinating. It means like tearing flesh, like a dog. And it's like, wow, that's a really powerful word. And unbeknownst to me, my grandparents were the experts in sarcasm. And my dad learned that very quickly. And I think some of my siblings did too. I won't mention names. My brother. But as a little kid, things that were done in jest, I didn't know they were joking. Like, I'm such an intense guy. I'm not a funny guy. I'm maybe dry humor, but every word, every joke, every negative tearing, like, I received it as this is the truth. Like this, I'm hearing this because this is who I am. Like every funny remark about how stupid I was, or make it up. It was just a smorgasbord of every topic. And I thought, this is me. Like this is exactly my dad's talking out these jokes, but I didn't receive them as the jokes. I received them as this is the truth. So. And then on the same hand, my mom was very critical. So I learned to screen what I could receive from my mom. If she criticized, I had to kind of go inside myself and say, no, that's not true. She says this, but I'm going to believe this about myself. And so I became very independent. And actually, it became a problem later because when I got married and my wife would say something to me, what I would do is I would pick the important parts and remember them, and all the other parts she would mention, I'd actually screen out. And she said, I told you that. I said, no, you never told me that, because I didn't remember it. I didn't file it into something that I'd remember that was important. So anyway, whew. Okay, so this is a really, I think, pivotal point in my story, because, to be honest, I wanted to be a good boy, like, really. I wanted to be told I was being good. And I don't know what was my responsibility in this season, but my dad had bought like a really nice house because we lived with my grandparents initially. Yeah, but I don't know what I'd done to create the environment that led to this situation. But one night, my dad was so upset at me, he says, I'm going to phone the children's home and I'm going to see if they're going to take you because I'm done. Like, we're finished. And it's like, what? So he pretended to go on the phone. I was upstairs listening, and he's on the phone telling them about me. And he comes off the phone and he says, oh, they don't have any room for you. It's like, and deep down I thought, wow, my parents don't want me. The home doesn't want me. And anyway, I don't know where I went from there, but it wasn't a good space to land. And I got a confession to make too. Like, I became very jealous of my sister because she got, if we're going to do love levels, I felt she was loved more than I was. And that made me angry at her. And I became a bit of a bully actually to my sister. So, and I'm sorry, and we've had this discussion, but there's still pain there because I inflicted pain on you. And I'm also going to tell this other story just to show that how spiritual forces work. One day we'd been to Aberdeen, so Aberdeen's like a 40-mile trip by car, so about over an hour. And somehow my sister got more than I did. This is a typical story of how I was thinking. Oh, there she goes again, getting more. And so how it worked was a 5-seater car, my brother on the left, my sister in the middle, and I was on the right. And all of a sudden, I'm aware of this little fairy imp thing jumping from the back seat onto my mom's either shoulder or onto the back of her chair. And it made me smile. It's like, oh, that's cute. And then it looks at me and it says, hit your sister. And it brought me right up. It's like, what? And now all it did was it showed me the spiritual thing that had been influencing me to hurt my sister. Now, I'm not saying I'm blaming this thing, guys. I am fully responsible for everything that I did. But it just showed me, it's the only time I actually got an insight into the dark spiritual forces that I talk about in my videos. And here was me as a little kid. I was maybe 7, 8, and being influenced by a demonic little Scottish imp fairy thing that was talking to me in my head to hurt my sister. So I'm jumping all over the place here, but before I started my YouTube channel, I was very aware that I'd failed my kids in many ways. And I decided to write them a love letter, just telling them how the things I'd done wrong as a dad, and basically apologizing and asking them for forgiveness. Now, my kids love me, guys, so this is, they know I love them. I tell them I'm not always perfect, but they know in my heart I want the best for them. So in my letter to one of my daughters, I said I was so desperate for physical touch from my dad that I pretended to sleep in the car when I was little, like maybe 3, 4. And my dad carried me up to my bed. And that's how desperate I was for physical touch. So I wrote this in her letter. And at the end of all the letters I sent my kids, I said, guys, I'm open to talking. If there's anything in there that you have questions about, you need to come to me, and I'm willing to chat and discuss it, whatever. Anyway, my daughter came back and she said, Dad, I did that with you. I said, really? She says, yeah, I was so desperate for physical touch that I pretended to sleep in the car so you would carry me in. It's like, oh my goodness. And I think this is how generational things get carried forward, guys. And the reason that I'm doing these videos is I don't want you to be third and fourth generation of people that continue doing the same thing because what they were doing was hidden. Like, I'm trying to be transparent. So, okay, but she says, Dad, I want to talk to you. It's like, okay, get my seatbelt on. And she says, Dad, if you knew that you needed physical touch when you were growing up, why didn't you give me that? Great question. And the only thing I can answer is that I honestly didn't have the tools. I did have nothing to imitate, to copy, to pull out of my own hat, if you like. I had nothing I could take from to give you what you needed. And I didn't know. I didn't know you needed that. Even though I needed it, I thought I was probably doing the best I was doing as a dad. But again, I obviously failed in that level. So the love component, guys, is such a big deal. If you look at my picture, what the picture is a woman, this woman, with Jesus' eyes, just Jesus' hands on her face, and he's saying, look into my eyes, let me see you. And what he's saying is, he says, you are beloved. You are my beloved. And the response back is, my beloved is mine. You are my beloved, and my beloved is like, it's a two-way stream. So anyway, maybe at this point, I would ask the question of myself, actually. So Ian, what is the opposite of love? Is it hate? Well, it could be. For me, the opposite of love is rejection. And it's a topic that it's a subject that I've had to walk through. I mean, I'm 69. I still have to overcome rejection almost on I'm going to say a weekly basis, monthly basis. And as I jump into the next painting, which is a lot more intimate than Beloved, now it comes down to, Ian, what does Jesus think of you? And that changes everything. Because there's different kinds of love. Because I think my dad must have known there's different words for love and but there's like brotherly love, there's a caring love, there's different words. There's an attractive love, like an eros love. And as I grew up, I bought into the eros love. So dating was a really fascinating time for me. Weird as it all was, like then it was physical touch, and it was weird. I had no idea what I was doing, obviously, as a as a youth dating. And again, this is a big topic, guys. I don't have the answers. I'm just telling you my story. If it helps you, then that's great. And I think this is the challenge for me. To know God loves me and my parents love me in my head, that's one thing. But to know that He loves me no matter what, in my heart, I mean, that changes the story completely. So then my daughter said to me, part of my letter to my kids was, look, I was an angry dad. I used anger to control you guys. So my daughter said to me, Dad, because you demonstrated anger and control as a model, I looked at men through those eyes, and I looked at God through those eyes. You inadvertently taught me that love and control were tied together, and the fact is, for me, she said, is that they're completely opposite. Love gives you the freedom as an adult to choose, and control doesn't give you any of those choices. So even as my daughter saw me as that angry, controlling person, I think I got to share this. I saw God as that angry, controlling, aloof, lofty, domineering person. And so in some ways, God had to take me full circle out of Scotland, through hidden, through broken, glimpses, I'm going to say glimpses, guys, of love, because we can't even contain the love that God has for us. So we get little snippets, and it's good to recognize these. I've got a painting, I'm going to show it to you. I might even put it on this clip. And it's called Found, because there was a season here and here where as much as I was broken, I also felt in that season, I felt very, very lost and alone. And my painting Found, I'll interject it into this video so you can see it. Is this a really important step in the journey? Because you don't go from hidden to full on knowing how much God loves you in the intimacy. Like, I don't know if you can zoom in, but this is just in God's beauty in his creation, the flowers, the birds, the purity, the innocence. It's just another level of the revelation of God's love to each of us if we just continue on the journey. Like a lot of us, guys, to be honest, we give up on God maybe here. We won't lift our face, or we give up here where we say, God, if you're God and you're all powerful, you wouldn't let such and such happen. And I think there's a lot of people that never really get to this season. And I'm still working on being the beloved. Like, I know I'm the beloved, but walking that out, guys, is a very slow. It's a day at a time. Like every moment, the things you choose to do, the things that come out of your mouth, the way you use your hands to do things, your gentleness. It's a journey. Like we're never really there, to be honest. So if you think you've arrived, guys, just step back and buckle up, because the next step of the journey is going to be happening pretty soon. And enjoy the trip. Just strap her up and away we go again. So yeah, so this is going to be even harder to talk about. And maybe I'm just going to leave it with, this is, guys, just a level of intimacy that, you know what? I don't think I'm going to share my intimate moments with Jesus because they're not yours. And I'd like you to find yours. Like, I don't want to tell you mine, because then what? Because I'm better, bigger, more important, because God's talking to me. God wants to talk to all of us in that intimate moments, in those moments. He wants to talk to us in the hidden moments, in the broken moments, in the lovely moments. My next big video is, I'm going to take my story and I'm going to point to one thing. And it's the one thing that's really held me together. You see the formation of the Celtic symbols there? It's the cross. It's central to my story. And I'm going to preach the gospel. So I don't know if you can handle that, but it's the good news, guys. I'm going to preach using my story. And how I'm going to do it is, this is Ian's life. And this is what Jesus thinks about the steps that Ian's taken in his journey. And as much as people would look on and say, oh, that wasn't wise, Ian, that was stupid. Because God called me to do it, there's no stupid in that. And I don't care if people say that I'm unwise. But anyway, I'm going to from start to finish, I'm going to basically preach the gospel using my art and my story as a reflection on how Jesus led me and then how he was led, because these things should be run in parallel, guys. If we're walking with Jesus, we should be reflecting his life and his journey. This whole death and resurrection thing, we should be living that out today. Anyway, that got really heavy. I'm sorry. But guys, thank you for continuing to hang in there. And if you just jumped in, I apologize. Anyway, thank you and God bless.